With Joe Burrow finding his way back on the field for the Cincinnati Bengals, we wonder what are some of the other big comebacks that we're looking forward to seeing here in 2024. We got all that and much more for you on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, football fans, and welcome into another episode of Locked On NFL, where we break down all the biggest stories from around the National Football League every single day. It's Tuesday. Today, you've got David Harrison at DHarrison82, myself, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola. You can find us both on your favorite social media. And, of course, on today's episode, we're going to be bringing you some of the biggest stories from around the league. So, of course, we're going to also get to our yike and our like as well, as we always do here on Tuesdays, including Boom Roasted, the Tom Brady roast, which was both a hit and not so much as well. So we'll get to all of that. We're also going to be taking a look at Odell Beckham Jr. taking his talents to South Beach as we hit some of the biggest headlines of the early portion of the week so far. But the biggest story right now, obviously, centers around Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow, who found his way back onto the field in Cincinnati. And so we're going to break that down, as well as some other comeback stories we're looking forward to seeing here in 2024. We appreciate you very much, as always, for tuning in for another episode of Locked On NFL and making it your first listen of the day every day, and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by our friends over at Monopoly Go. Look, David and I, we've got competitive sides. We compete all the time with each other, with other people. We have even taken it to people on the basketball court. David Harrison and I know we haven't yet, but we will. Step up, challenge us, see what happens. And our competitive sides are a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist, the classic Monopoly that you already know and love. So join your friends today and download Monopoly Go over at the App Store and Google Play. David, as we take a look here, Joe Burrow back on the field for the Cincinnati Bengals. Our good friend James Rapine has been covering this story like crazy all day on Monday. As we look ahead here on Tuesday, let's start with the Joe Burrow story, because if you're like me, man, you're excited to see him get back out on the field in 2024.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, he's, you just go back through the draft process. And when he came out of LSU, he's one of those guys that, every year we have like that top quarterback or that top player. But Joe Burrow is one of those dudes that everybody was so confident in him and his ability and what he could turn out to be in the National Football League. And then, of course, injuries, right? I mean, the first one to this one, like that's the only thing they can derail him. I mean, the back-to-back Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs can't even necessarily stop Joe Burrow more than those injuries have. So, in today's NFL, especially, like we all know that the MVP award is really the most valuable quarterback award, or the most successful quarterback award. But Joe Burrow is, and I don't even want to say it's rare, right? Because I think, like, if you look at the Baltimore Ravens, you take Lamar Jackson off the field, they're nowhere near as good as they are with Lamar Jackson. But Joe Burrow is one of those quarterbacks that truly is a most valuable player on his team, whereas some teams, it's kind of negotiable. Like, is the quarterback really the most valuable player on that team? So Joe Burrow is one of those, and I mean, the AFC North is not hurting for talent and competitive teams in that division, but you want the Bengals to be as competitive as they can be. I don't know. There's like I haven't met too many people who just dislike Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow is just a guy that everybody can kind of root for. So.
Yeah, all the way back to the cigar in the locker room, all the good stuff, like, Burrow with the EAUX on the back of the jersey. Like, he's just always been like that dude. And I'm so excited for him to get back out on the field. You've even seen the ripple effects of what has happened without having Joe Burrow. Tyler Boyd not brought back. T. Higgins had trade rumors circulating around him. Trey Hendrickson demanding a trade. I know he's on the other side of the football, but still, the difference between when this team is viewed as a successful team and when it's led by Joe Burrow versus when it's not being seen as a successful team and it's not being led by Joe Burrow. Those two things do intersect. So I am looking forward to seeing Joe Burrow back on the field in 2024. And there are some other players that I'm really excited to see back as well. Let's start with somebody maybe from your list. Do you have one guy outside of Joe Burrow that you're like stoked to see back in 2024?
Yeah, so the guy that I'm most excited to see back, and he's not going to win the award unless he just goes nuts, because the Comeback Player of the Year award, I don't know, like I almost kind of feel like that's a quarterback award too. I don't have the list of previous winners in front of me, but I kind of feel like that's almost a quarterback driven award as well. But Nick Chubb, I mean, that dude,
man.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago, easily the best running back in the National Football League. And,
Yep.
I'm not a Browns fan, but I've got a lot of friends who are Browns fans. So maybe I'm a little bit, pulled kind of close to that. But I just like the way that Nick Chubb plays. I like the skills that he shows on the field. And I think that he's incredibly valuable to that Cleveland Browns team. And we've done a lot of conversing about the Cleveland Browns this offseason here on Locked On NFL. And they're one of those teams that I just kind of feel like they're really in like this kind of like weird crossroads like moment where like they've got a lot of talent, but they don't really seem to know how to put it all together all the time. And they just kind of seem snake bitten where something goes wrong. Uncle Joe comes through and like saves their year, but then at the end of the day, it's not enough to really keep things going. Like it's just been a really weird thing for the Cleveland Browns these last, I don't know, like the entire existence of their franchise, I guess, really.
Right.
But Nick Chubb's just one of those dudes that I just want to see him on the field. Running back is my favorite position going back to when I was a kid. So I always kind of get drawn to running backs, and Nick Chubb is just one of those ones that you just love to watch run the football.
Yeah, Uncle Joe, by the way, last year's comeback player of the year, as you mentioned, quarterback, beating out the guy that literally lost his life on the field and then made his way back to the football field. That's crazy. But the last time that a comeback player of the year was a non-quarterback was 2017, Keenan Allen. There was a nice run there. Rob Gronkowski, 2014, Eric Berry, 2015, Jordy Nelson, 2016, one of my favorite players to ever watch play football. And then Keenan Allen, 2017. Everything after that has been quarterback after quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. And I'm going quarterback myself, David, with the guy that I'm excited to see get back out on the field. But I got to tell you, Nick Chubb, 100%. I'm right there with you. This guy is one of those dudes that's like this bigger style back that can also catch out of the backfield. So he often gets looked at as this like between the tackles runner, but he can do so much more, like him being one of those guys. Another AFC North return that I'm really, really excited to see. I'll stick in the AFC, but I'm gonna go to the opposite cardinal direction there. I'm going AFC South. Anthony Richardson. I know we barely got to see anything of the kid. I get it. Ross, what are you really excited about? There's no basis. There's no foundation. I don't care. I want to find out. And that's why I'm so excited for him to get back out on the field. There is testing wise, athletics testing wise, right? Coming into the NFL, there's nobody like Anthony Richardson in the league. And so I want to see what he's able to do with a healthy season. And ideally, a better offense out in front of them, more weapons now, which is super exciting too. And the opportunity just to be able to move the ball through the air, not have to rely on the legs as much, which might keep him a little bit healthier, yada, yada, yada. I mean, we saw the impact that had on Lamar Jackson, right? To where like he wasn't running as much and all these other things. And so I can't wait to see Anthony Richardson get out there and finally be able to see, okay, does that sort of, dynamic athlete on paper through testing, this once in a generation type player, do those numbers translate to on-field production? And more importantly, for the Indianapolis Colts, wins.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, he's a guy I want to see back on the field too, and I want to see him be successful. I mean, truth be told, I'm just a supporter of human dreams, right? So I just want to see them all be successful anyway. Great. But you go back to the draft process, and Anthony Richardson's stock, from the outsiders to the insiders, like it was night and day for quite a while there. I remember there were conversations about, is he even a day one guy or is he a day two guy?
Right.
And then right around the Senior Bowl, right? Like we're in Mobile and there's murmurs going around that he might be a top 10 guy. And it still took the media a little bit of time to really kind of embrace Anthony Richardson as this like first round lock quarterback. And then I feel like the fan bases were just all kind of split as well. So, Anthony Richardson is he's one of those guys that, because of how the evaluation process went and because of how some of the reactions to how high he was drafted went, you want to see him be able to prove or disprove it on his talents, right? Like you don't there's nothing worse than hearing a guy talked about in the histories of draft, conversations as being a bust. And it's because he got injured,
agree.
You look at a guy like Robert Griffin III, like there's no secret that Robert Griffin III also wasn't that great of a human being while he was with Washington. So like, it's hard to feel bad for him, but at the end of the day, if he stays healthy, if his body holds up to his career choices, like you could argue like he might have been one of the greatest, most electric quarterbacks we ever saw play this game. So you just hate to see guys become quote unquote busts because their body can't hold up. And you want to see them be able to prove it or disprove it, whether, whatever it's going to be, you want to see it happen on the field with the talent and with the work ethic versus anything like that. So
back
healthy.
Yeah, Robert Griffin III's debut here in New Orleans had everyone convinced that he was going to be
Yeah.
exactly that, right? And it looked like that's where it was headed until the injuries set in for sure. So those are some of the guys who we're very excited to see. Of course, there are others. If you've got names, go ahead and send them over to us. We love to hear your names that you're excited to see back in the NFL in 2024 as well. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the headlines for the day, including Odell Beckham Jr. taking his talents to South Beach. We got all that coming up for you here as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL. And today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. I've been playing Monopoly Go like crazy. Myself and Jake Madison, we've got a game going on from over at Locked On Pelicans. He's always coming through and busting up my town. You get wrecking balls to run through people's stuff if you want to. You can heist their vaults. There's so much going on there. My family and I have actually been playing Monopoly Go for a long time because I grew up playing Monopoly. So this was our way to kind of continue the tradition. So it's been a lot of fun. But this just has so much more. There's stickers. I love collectibles in video games. You got stickers that you can collect and trade with your friends to complete albums for big prizes. There's mini games as well, like digging for treasure and robot pachinko machines and so much more. There is just a ton to check out that'll get you things like massive multipliers, big time rewards, so on and so forth. So make sure you go and check it out because there's always something fun to discover at Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and head into the game. Go download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, everybody, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On NFL. David Harrison and Ross Jackson here with you on this wonderful Tuesday. And we're going to take a look at the headlines here, including Odell Beckham Jr. taking his talents to South Beach, headed to the Miami Dolphins, and a couple of other big signings here as mini camps pick up. The draft is now done. Teams are now looking to see, okay, where can we fill some of the holes that are still up on the roster? And there's still some really talented veteran free agents out there. And now we're starting to see them finally fly off of the market. So we appreciate you very much for being here on another episode of Locked On NFL, for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to go and check out Locked On Sports today as well, the 24/7 national streaming channel, first of its kind when it comes to national sports on YouTube. It's everything that you're looking for from all the big stories around the world of sports without all the yelling and screaming you're going to find on some of those other, well, maybe except for myself and Tyler Rowland. We tend to be pretty loud, but outside of us, none of the yelling and screaming and arguing and bickering that you're going to see on some of those other networks. Go and check it out on the Locked On Sports Today YouTube page. You can also download the app and find it on the Amazon Fire TV channels app as well. So, David, as we take a look at some of the big headlines today, obviously one of the biggest ones that's happened so far this week is Odell Beckham Jr., former New York Giant, former Baltimore Raven, former Los Angeles Rams, Super Bowl winner, all these other things, now headed to the Miami Dolphins to team up again with Jalen Ramsey on the other side of the football. You got Tyreek Hill there. You got Jalen Waddle. You've got Tua Tagovailoa and a pretty solid draft class. There's a lot of stuff to like about what the Miami Dolphins are doing, but how much does Odell Beckham Jr. have the ability to potentially move the needle at this point in his career for this team?
I think as long as he's okay being that third guy, then I think there's a lot of potential, to be quite honest with you. I mean, we talk about it all the time. The second year coming back from an ACL injury, right, is always like the good one, right? That's like a lot of people. I remember Chris Godwin, when he came back from his for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, really talked about how the second season felt like his first real season back. Like that entire first year back, it was just all about getting his legs back under him and getting confidence back and doing all those things. Well, if that's the case for Odell Beckham, and granted he's a little bit older in this situation than Chris was, this is that year. This is that first full year that he's going to be completely healthy and be able to kind of work out. And it's been mentioned by some other people, like when he signed with Baltimore, he really had to get into football shape by playing football for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, hopefully, right, that's the hope is there's a little bit of a run up to it. There's a little bit of a preparation ramp. And I just think that with those other weapons on the field and with what the Miami Dolphins like to do on offense, I mean, anytime you're going into a game against Miami Dolphins, you're already expecting a track meet. I remember watching them come into FedEx Field, last year, and I was really excited for that game, but I was not excited for that game because of the people that I covered. Like I was kind of worried for them, and for good reason. And Tyreek Hill put on a show and the Dolphins did their thing, but it was, as a pure football fan, like to be able to watch something like that unfold and an offense that operates that way, where it's, what they're going to do. Like, it's really not like they don't outsmart you. Like they just say, like, we are who we are. You're not going to stop it. And then you can't stop it. Right. So adding Odell Beckham to the fold I mean, I just look at the money that he took, look at the situation. Like, you have to feel like he kind of has to come in this thing understanding he's the third dude, right? Like,
Yep.
he's not the first or even the second dude. So if that's true and he's fully embracing that, then I think he actually has an opportunity to be very impactful for the team. Right now, it's not going to show up on their fantasy football roster probably
Right.
very well, but for the Dolphins, I think he has a really good chance to be impactful.
Yeah, and you've got a veteran guy that's played in a lot of different systems. I left the Cleveland Browns off the list when I was going over some of his former teams, but look, that's one of those schemes that is one to where it's not just about what one individual player, especially when it comes to route running, does for themselves. It's how do you open up opportunities for other players. Now you have a 31-year-old Odell Beckham Jr. that has a ton of experience walking into one of the NFL's most exciting schemes on offense right now, with biracial king Mike McDaniel leading the way over there. And then, this exciting and electrifying team that you mentioned. Yeah, I think he helps. I don't know that you're going to see a 100-yard receiving game from him in 2024, but I also don't think that's necessarily what you need. You just need a safety to look at him instead of Jalen Waddle on a play. You need a safety to look at him instead of Tyreek Hill on the play. And then you just need him to make the catch that one time that the safety looks over at Tyreek Hill and doesn't look at him as he crosses the middle of the field from the slot. Like, I think that's got to be the way that he ends up having an impact. I think if you can get that from him, worth every penny and worth every opportunity for Odell Beckham Jr. as well. As we take a look at some of the other signings that have happened here over the course of the week, Rashad Penny, the running back formerly of the Seattle Seahawks, talk about a guy that's battled some injuries in his time. He's headed down to the NFC South, joining the Carolina Panthers, who our good friend Julian Council just pointed out. They were just talking about how much they really believe in Miles Sanders being a part of this team. Then they turn around and they drafted Jonathan Brooks. They already have Chuba Hubbard, who they kind of flipped to be the starting guy wisely last year over Miles Sanders. And then now they go out there and then they sign Rashad Penny. I agree with Julian's sentiment that actions speak louder than words. But I do think that, like, Rashad Penny's coming in probably as your third running back at best, behind your rookie and Jonathan Brooks and behind Chuba Hubbard, I'd imagine.
With a young quarterback, it's important to have a run game to establish. And with the way the running backs go down in the NFL, I mean, stockpile as many as you can. He knows Rashaad knows him. They know the language, they know the system. So there's going to be really no language lost there. So I think it's a smart move for both. And, I don't think there's too many teams probably pounding on Rashad Penny's door these days. So it's a smart move for both guys, but I think it very much points to the Carolina Panthers. They don't have a guy, that they're going to lean on. But yeah, I don't think Rashad Penny's going to be that guy either.
Yeah. I'm very against the notion that you can have too many running backs, too many wide receivers when you're building a 90-man roster. Build your 90-man roster, stockpile what you can. And a team that has stockpiled at a particular position is the Las Vegas Raiders as well. They go out there, they sign Michael Gallup, the former Cowboys wide receiver. Then they add a cross-division rivals piece in Jalen Guyton, adding there. They've already got good pieces there, not the least of which, of course, being Devontae Adams, who are all there. So they have all these people, and then they've also drafted Brock Bowers. They have all these guys to catch the football, just not really anybody to throw the football just yet. But this is where you kind of build the nest around the quarterback that you want and try to put them in. But at the other signing that also happened with them was Andrus Peat, the former New Orleans Saints offensive lineman, headed to Las Vegas. Interesting to finally see a Saint head to Las Vegas rather than a Raider head to New Orleans, which has typically been the way that pipeline has traveled here recently. What I can say about Andrus Peat is that he gives you guard and tackle versatility. And that's something that's very valuable in the NFL. And he probably played his best season just last year when he had to start the majority of his games out at left tackle. I don't think that it's a surprise to not see him back in New Orleans, because what are you going to pay a guy that had one solid year and did it at left tackle? You know what I mean? If you're the Saints, who are always kind of really nudging up against that cap line, it's tough to justify what you're going to pay a player like that. And so him heading to Las Vegas, I think, gives the Raiders and their kind of sneaky quarterback, situation they've got going on over there, at least some additional reinforcement, some protection to maybe be able to take advantage of some of that those pass catchers they've been bringing in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's always these schools of thought conversations that we have, around draft time on how you build a roster and a franchise and how to best, support a young quarterback. And I remember early on in the process, before Sam Howell was drafted or traded to the Seattle Seahawks, I was telling Commanders fans, like, look, there is an argument to be made here of trading out of number 2, trading back, collecting picks, maybe getting that top left tackle in the draft, rolling with Sam Howell for another year, see how that pans out, and then maybe install a quarterback later on. But then they traded Sam Howell, and it's like, okay, well, now you got a quarterback. Like you
Now you
have
got
to
to
go.
do it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you look at the Las Vegas Raiders, and like they were kind of in this weird situation where like there's 4, maybe 5, depending on how much you believe in certain guys, like franchise leading quarterbacks available, which is not normal in one NFL draft class. So do you go like all out to go get that guy, or do you sit back and build, like you said, an infrastructure around a future quarterback, and maybe you find yourself a Brock Purdy in the process, like the 49ers did? If you don't, you have a better nucleus. And I always go back to when the Atlanta Falcons put Matt Ryan in, they put him inside a very good team already around him, and ultimately didn't win him a ring. But I think that Matt Ryan had a much better platform to build his career off of because of the Falcons did it that way. And so, at the end of the day, I applaud the Raiders at least because they decided to go away. They went we'll build the team and then we'll worry about the quarterback later way, but they're dedicated to it. Like what you hate to see is like a team kind of do that, but then like in the second round, they trade up to get like the 7th quarterback off the board. And you're like, dude, like you can't do it both ways. You know what I mean? So they went that way. They're going that way. And yeah, they're taking as many bites of the apple as they can to try to do things, but also be competitive in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Coming up next, we're going to be taking a look at our yike and our like for the week, leading off, of course, with the roast of Tom Brady, which was all the news after it premiered Monday night or Sunday night. We got that coming up for you as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is our official sports betting partner here on the Locked On Podcast Network and, of course, America's #1 sportsbook. You can go and find so much there. They have a ton of NFL draft props. They have a ton as well. If you're taking a look at some other things that you might not expect, boxing, golf, racing, there's just so much to choose from over at FanDuel. And right now, it's winner take all time in the NBA, the NHL, and FanDuel is making sure that they're giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Here's how you can get it done. If you're a new customer, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets by simply winning any $5 bet. Go and find out, a team that's playing maybe in the NBA finals. It's a heavy favorite over the other. Bet on that as your first ever bet over at FanDuel. If you get it right, you win a little bit of those winnings, just $5 though, not a big deal. And then you're also going to get $150 in bonus bets if you win that bet. That's then $150 that you can then put on spreads, money lines, player props, offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year in the NFL. If you're willing to wait for a little while, so much to check out over at FanDuel. So all you got to do to get started is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, y'all, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On NFL with our yike and our like. We do this every Tuesday, something we liked from the week before, something that we didn't like from the week before. And today is going to be a lot about Tom Brady. I bet you thought you were done hearing about Tom Brady on NFL podcasts. Well, not just yet. And I'm not even talking about just the ones that he appears on. We're going to be taking a look at all that today. We appreciate you very much for checking us out. Don't forget, we are your team every day. So James and Chris will be with you tomorrow as well to answer some of the biggest burning questions over the NFL offseason. So make sure you come back for that. David, your yike and your like have a little bit of an overlap this week, and I love it.
Yeah. It's both about the Tom Brady roast, right? So I don't want to like misrepresent myself here. I don't like know Tom Brady intimately or anything like that, but I do, cover the Buccaneers. It's kind of weird. Like I've got like a side hustle in the NFL. Like the Buccaneers are kind of my side hustle. And so, I got to go to training camp while Tom was with the Bucs, cover a few games and see him in the locker room, do some podium stuff with him, obviously, and stuff like that. And just the little bit that you get to know Tom. Then, of course, the most important part is talking to the beat reporters who are there every single day covering the Buccaneers and co-hosting Locked On Bucs with James Jarko for as long as I did. Like the personality that Tom Brady has, at least from a football standpoint, is very in control of his image and very in control of the narrative and the message that is going on around him. So when I first heard that he was going to get roasted, I was like, that alone is a little bit outside of Tom Brady marketing. I'll put it that way, right? Like who the person is, the Tom Brady, the person, I think we all kind of understand this. Like the football player is one person, the actual human being is a little bit of a different person a lot of times. the Tom Brady person, really not surprised that he would be in for that kind of a thing. But the player, that's what was interesting to me. And it kind of reminded me of like, remember when like, I don't know, like the Disney Channel actor turned like 20 or something. It was like, I'm going to go be an action star. So they got to do something that like shocks the senses and says, I'm not this little kid anymore. I'm a grown up now. Right. It was kind of like one of those moments because Tom is about to go in the broadcast booth. And there's a lot of conversations about whether or not Tom Brady has the personality and can be as open about the game. And I kind of feel like this is like one of those moments, maybe strategically, he's like, we need to shake everything up and kind of break me away from this image that everybody has of me that I crafted over these last 20 plus years, because I'm about to go in a different realm where I've got to be more transparent. I've got to be more honest. And you almost don't want that to be such a surprise, if that makes sense. So I like the fact that Tom did it because I think it shows people that, hey, listen, you don't necessarily know everything about me. So if you have doubts about me as a broadcaster and all this other stuff, like you don't necessarily know me maybe as well as you do. My yike about it, Ross, is that the more like notoriety I gain from being a part of this amazing network, I'm definitely not a celebrity. I'm definitely not famous, but the more notoriety I gain, the more Commanders fans recognize me and come up to me. I love it and I appreciate it. And it's super cool. Don't get me wrong. But I'm also like, definitely want to make sure my private life stays private. And I've always kind of said this. I've always kind of said, I never want to be a celebrity. I never wanted to be an actor. I never wanted to be a singer or a rapper. Like I never wanted to be famous because that you give that away. And that roast, like more than almost any other roast I've witnessed, that roast shows you right there. Like if you want to be a celebrity in this world, you have zero privacy and nothing is off limits. Because if Tom Brady, someone who is so in control of his own narrative around him, can have some of the things that were discussed in that roast discussed as openly and as often as they were in that roast, nobody is off limits. And so for me personally, that's a little bit of a yike because like I don't want you coming in my closets. I don't have as many things as Tom's got going on, but I don't want people coming in my closets anyway. So
yeah, no, I hear you on that. I'm with you. I was shocked by how much Giselle content there was with that. I did love Tom's kind of hat tip to Deflategate, though. That was probably one of my favorite moments. Cool. And Bill Belichick is going to be a star. In fact, I think Bill Belichick shouldn't even return to coaching. I think that he should just be on television. He's going to go back to coaching. He should go back to coaching. But man, he would do just as well being an analyst, being on television, just having a microphone in front of his face. The dude's a joy. Yeah. But yes, no, I'm absolutely with you. I'll give you my like. My like is JJ Watt. My like about JJ Watt isn't really about JJ Watt. It's more about the Houston Texans. So basically what he said was, I'd be willing to make a return and unretire to return to the Texans if they needed it. That is not something that JJ Watt is saying about the Texans pre-DeMeco Ryans. That is not something that JJ Watt is saying about the Houston Texans pre-CJ Stroud. That is only something that this JJ Watt is saying about this Houston Texans team. And man, has that Houston Texans team come a long freaking way from where it was before. And that's the like for me. I love seeing teams gut it out and say, you know what? We're just going to scrap this. This isn't working. You can sign, you could sign your soul away to draft or to trade for this player that has been nothing but a nuisance for us, over the course of the past few years. We'll rebuild over here. And then to see it happen and to see it all come together, and then to have a superstar like JJ Watt, who of course loves that team. I still remember him walking off the field with Deshaun Watson after losing either in the playoff. No. It was one of those bad seasons where they had only won so many games, and him apologizing to Watson, who, to me, it's the gesture from JJ that's the important part of that. And so just to kind of see that just really kind of goes to show you where the Houston Texans are now versus where they were before.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. I saw that as well. And I mean, I kind of hope it happens. Like,
I would love it. If
it does, I hope they win the Super Bowl. I want to see JJ get a ring.
100%. He's one of those guys that leaves the NFL without one, and you go, man, I really wish he could have gotten that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm 100% with you on that. And then my yike this week is sharing opinions without giving context. And I'll leave it at that. No, I'm just kidding. That's just my joke. I don't really have a yike for this week. I've been in a very positive mood all week, so I'm gonna leave it with the like there and then wrap us up today. But I did like that joke. That was a good joke. That's my other like for the week. All right. we've done enough. We appreciate y'all very much for being here for another episode of Locked On NFL and tuning in here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Don't forget, you can find your favorite team's local Locked On podcasts all across the network here. NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, and dozens of college shows all covered for you here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we will see you again here soon. We appreciate all the everydayers, all of our first-time listeners, all of our next-time listeners. Thank you very much for being here and joining us for another episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.